Hi, Aqua Rumors. So we're finishing looking at the pictures in the book. Yes. And we ended with fever and ache. Oh my goodness. Where Laura and her family became so sick from the mosquitoes. Malaria. And there's Dr. Tan, the doctor with the Indians. And he came. He took care of them. Everybody was sick. That was something else. So, when the family started to get well, Pa made Ma the rocking chair. Remember? That was exciting. And, oh my goodness, fire in the chimney. Whew. Pa had quickly built the chimney and had used, well, anyway, whatever he used didn't work. So the fire came, Ma went out with a stick, broke it down, the big log dropped. Laura had enough strength to pull Mary and the chair and baby Carrie back. She didn't know how she could do it. So Pa built the chimney again. And then, at last, Pa went to town. He had to trade his furs, they needed supplies, and Ma wanted to send a letter to the folks back home in Wisconsin. And Mr. Edwards had told Pa he would come and help out while Pa was gone. And there's Jack, treeing Mr. Edwards on the woodpile. Laura and Mary are trying to stay awake for Pa to come back home. It's pretty hard. And they could not stay awake. Oh, wow. It had so much cold, so much rain, so much wind, and the mud had stuck to the wheels, and it was really hard for Pa. But he made it back home, and he brought panes of glass for the windows so they could look outside. That was exciting. Oh, so then there's a tall Indian, and he came into the house, and then some other Indians came in and took Pa's furs, but then they dropped them. So a lot of Indians are coming around, but the tall Indian was very kind. Yeah. And then, my goodness, the next chapter, this is very exciting. Mr. Edwards meets Santa Claus. It was cold, it was rainy, it was awful, and Laura and Mary were so worried that Santa Claus couldn't come. And guess what? Mr. Edwards went to Independence. Santa Claus saw him, asked him to bring all the gifts to Laura and Mary, because he didn't have a sleigh and he couldn't cross the creek. So there's Santa Claus with his pack mule and his bags, and he needed Mr. Edwards to get the gifts to the children. And what did they get? Cakes with white flour, a penny in the end of their stocking, candy canes, and a new tin cup. That was a wonderful Christmas. Ooh, a scream in the night. Wow, Pa didn't know what it was. He had no idea. And he went looking, and it was a panther in the tree. It sounded just like a woman screaming. Wow. He didn't get the panther, but he met an Indian along the way who told him that the panther, he followed the tracks, he'd gotten the panther. So then There's Pa with Mary and Laura. Oh, I love this picture. Isn't that nice? Yeah. We talked about that one. And he brought them beautiful headbands when he went to Independence. Ooh, my goodness. The next chapter, Prairie Fire. Do you see the billowing clouds? And there's Paul with this new plow. It's spring. He's getting the seeds in. Whoa, and all of a sudden, there comes the fire and the black smoke. Look at all the animals escaping. And Pa and Ma fanning the fire, putting water on it. Pa built a backfire. Wow. And it worked. And the house was saved. And the prairie was burned. Even the gophers were surprised when they popped their heads back up. But the burned prairie meant that it was so much easier for Pa to plow. So then, I know the Indians are gathering for their buffalo hunt. And Laura hears all kinds of strange singing and dancing, but it sounded a little scary. So Ma is telling them everything is okay. And there she is with Laura and Mary and baby Carrie in the rocking chair that Pa made. And as it turned out, the tribes were dividing and making peace and headed off their separate ways for the buffalo hunt. So, Indians ride away and they're leaving. But look at this. There is the tall Indian, Duchesne. He was wonderful. Pa saluted him, and the long line of Indians leaving. And Laura was fascinated. She was captivated. She loved the ponies, and she loved looking at, see the baby, the papoose in the basket? Yep. And that baby's eyes followed her eyes. Laura wanted a baby. But of course, that could never be. No. So, it's time for Pa to plow and for Ma to start a garden and to weed. But the soldiers had told everybody that they were living in Indian territory and they would need to move. And Pa said goodbye to Mr. Scott and to Mr. Edwards, and he gave Mr. Scott the cow and the calf because they could not take them on a big trip. Nope. That was a hard day. Yep. Going out. So they packed up the wagon, and there's the house and the stable all closed up. Maybe somebody will come along and need to stay there. And Pa even said, well, the bunnies will have a great time eating everything that we planted in the garden. Oh, and that night for dinner, they ate the seed potatoes, everything they had been saving. So they're on their way. Yep. Almost to the end of the book. So there they are on the high prairie. And this is just like they were in the beginning of the book, where they left the little house in the big woods. And now they're leaving the little house on the prairie. So boys and girls, this was a wonderful story. And I will tell you, there are more books in this story. Because the author, Laura, writes what happened happens next. And you may want to read those stories one day. It's wonderful. Thank you, boys and girls. Great chapter reading. Bye.